All right, before our panelists come on board, right, can I get everybody to just stand up? I know everyone's a bit sleepy, okay? So if I can get everyone to stand up, especially the folks behind. All right, what I want you guys to do, right, is to close your eyes. Right, I want everyone to close your eyes. Okay, this is individual effort. This is not a team effort. Okay? Hey, I see, hey, Mark, your eyes are still open. All right. When I count to 3, I want everybody to point north. Okay? If you do not know where north is, as in the north, south, east, west, and north, I want you to make your best guess. Okay? No peeping. 1, 2, 3. Point north. Don't open your eyes. Keep your eyes closed. Now, everybody open eyes and look around. How many norths are there? Quite a lot, right? All right, thank you. Sit down. So hopefully you're, a little more awake. But the problem right now is that, everyone's talking about big data. But if you ask 10% what big data is, you'll probably get 11 answers, right? So hopefully over the next, 15, 20 minutes or so, right, our speakers will share with you, right, some of their insights. And the thing is, it's really important because, we are really in this wake of global dislocations, right, that's created by, the pandemic, rising cost of living, the conflict in Eastern Europe, threat from new technology, and so on and so forth, right? We are in this period of what, French social scientists coined as a polycrisis back in the 1990s. So I think it's really important for our experts here to share that sort of insights, right? So the session is really about how can big data help to manage your risk across the entire supply chain effectively, right? And we have Richard here, who needs no introduction, who just spoken. And of course, we have Bjorn from Zurich Insurance Company. And then we have Kunal, on my extreme left from IIRIS. So just to kick off the panel discussion, right? If I could ask our panelists, right? So what role does data analytics and real-time monitoring play in identifying risks and potential risks, preventing disruptions to businesses and their supply chain? So maybe we can go from my left to right. Richard, we'll start with you.
I think one of the advantages is that it obviously allows people to analyze vast amount of information very quickly and also aid in your decision making, particularly when resources are limited. Okay, so you want to be guided in the right direction, and this is what the way we're moving now is. We're going to be much better informed by the use of big data analytics. Certainly in my world, where it's all about, as we talked earlier on, is sucking in information and then producing intelligence, which then can be used to inform you so that you can, deal with those risks that are closest to the canoe, as we say. So that's the way that I see it.
Yeah, right. I think the biggest thing is insight. Data will give you insight as long as you know how to interpret the data. So I've always told my customers, you need to sort of translate it into Mickey Mouse language, because data itself is very difficult. You need to make a story out of it which people understand and they can buy into it, and then it can be executed. So that's my input. Yeah.
So shall I say, data has been around for many years, right? But abundance of data doesn't always amount to good knowledge. So having the right tools to convert that data into actionable intelligence and also predictive intelligence, that's where it actually makes a difference. Data is across the board, across the various departments within every organization, but how do you collate all of that data and convert that into knowledge? that's the name of the game.
Right, so Richard, right, help us understand how can organizations harness this data analytics, this data intelligence, right, to optimize their supply chain operation and improve overall business performance?
Okay, I mean, data is, people can use multiple sources to collect the data. It's got to be focused, okay? You don't just go out there and just collect everything. You know, you've got to align it with what your particular industry is. So if you're in the maritime industry, you want to be collecting data about shipping lanes or whatever risks associated with moving stuff by sea, whatever, but it's got to be focused. So you're hoovering it in, and then, of course, you've got to analyze that data. And this is where the skill is. Now, we are seeing technology, which we talk about AI, which is going to assist with analyzing that information, but you can't take away really good analysts that are able also to review that product and then come up with their findings and which they can then share, okay? Because data is meaningless unless you use it, you process it, you understand it, and you come out with a conclusion at the end, and that should be focused towards whatever you're trying to achieve, right? Am I trying to speed up the shipment of goods? I want to reduce, look at security. Security is a cost center. A lot of companies think security is a cost center when actually it saves money if done correctly. But often it can slow down a process. So you may be under pressure to say, look, we need to cut some corners here because your recommendations in security is just slowing down the process. So by collecting the right data and analyzing it and presenting it well, you can argue your point that, look, no, actually, we're not slowing down the process. We are actually reducing the risk and loss. And prime example was the previous presentation around the systems that banks put in place to prevent the scheming of cards. The juddering effect does actually slow down the transaction because it slows it down, right? But it saves loss. So while she might be under pressure because there's some analyst out there saying, wow, this is a very busy ATM machine, we're building these processes, it's slowing down the transaction, so the queues are longer and we're not turning over. But actually what you are doing, because the data shows it, we're saving loss. Because I can prove to you, but by putting that juddering machine in, we have we've massively reduced the likelihood of skimming. So, data is a tool, if analyzed correctly, can be presented to the C-suite, the leadership, to show that, your recommendations are the correct ones.
Thanks, Richard. So moving conversation along, right, Bjorn, can you just share with the audience, right, how can organizations integrate data intelligence into their risk assessment process to identify patterns, trends, and potential vulnerabilities related to cargo crime?
That's, as an insurance industry, that's what we actually recommend our customers to do. So we ask them to, or we actually advise them to collect data, regardless which source, as long as it's useful data, which is concerning logistics, because we've seen customers use data which was not related to logistics incidents. Use the data, not only your own data, but preferably industry data, which is good, and then translate that into a risk-based approach for your security system. So it's not design one security system which would fit the whole world, because the whole world is not the same. So you have to have a solution in place, which is particularly for Mexico, you need a different solution than you would for Germany. And then also use the data to improve your supply chain. So if you now have the intention of getting all logistics data, you need to mine the data. You need to find out what am I looking for and what can I use to improve my logistics performance. And it's always nice to find, say, another department in your company that's using the same data. So you can collect data for security purposes and you can collect data for quality purposes. It's the same data, but it serves two departments. So you can have a partner in collecting the data and mining it. And all that is to improve the overall performance of the company and reduce costs. So.
Well, thank you. And Kunal, if you could move over to your side of the house, right? So if you can share with us your thoughts around how can predictive analytics and machine learning algorithms help organizations proactively identify potential risks, vulnerabilities within their supply chains, including those related to cargo crime?
Kunal.
Let's take, for example, any e-tailing logistics company. You have fixed assets, you have movable assets, you have brand value, you have a large marketplace, right? And all of these various segments, they basically have their own data variables. The way you correlate the data is what is the best effort basis. A classic example could be situational awareness, wherein something has sprung up on Twitter, has erupted in Twitter, and you actually convert that into actionable intelligence, and also look at when an incident happens on a particular area in a particular route, what have been the past history like? So if you have availability of historical data available, you could do a lot of predicting. You could ready yourself to take up any exigencies. Similarly, aspects like you have an upcoming strike, a protest, you have massive jams, or you have your weather conditions changing, or there is a political uprise. All of these could impact the brand and could impact the operations very adversely. So availability of data would not just provide you immediate actionables, but can also help you prepare what could be your steps in the future.
Right, thanks. So moving this along, right, the next question is really for all panelists, right? And it's on how can organizations communicate the value of data analytics, data intelligence in cargo crime prevention to your key stakeholders. And perhaps if you could share a specific personal example, right? Maybe this would allow our audience to better understand that.
Yeah, I've got quite a useful example, and this adds yesterday. I mean, we talk about data. It doesn't necessarily have to be numbers and figures, and it can actually be visual data. And one of the best examples I saw was, and this touched on again yesterday, was using AI and the data that was fed into AI, which in turn was linked to CCTV, which was then able to actually demonstrate how that data was being used to control access to a site by ignoring the security teams as they wandered around the facility in their vehicles and their uniforms and them, because their profiles, their data, their individual data was already in the system, and therefore that the CCTV and the motion sensors and everything else was ignoring them as they patrolled at night and focusing on the unusual behavior and anybody trying to break in whose data was not captured in the system and was not aligned to the AI. So what that was a clear demonstration to the leadership is that we have invested in this tool, and you can physically see in this demo how all that data we've processed and is in the system, and AI is learning from that, is now ignoring the good guys and actually focusing on the bad guys.
One example we have of a customer that the security division would like, their wish was to implement a smart supply chain so they could track and trace all the goods around the world, and if there was a deviation, they would intervene and the goods would be saved. The loss record was not really that bad. So the investment was denied until they had a meeting internally with the quality department and the financial department about what the initial idea behind collecting the data was. And the same data used for security purpose, actually the quality department said, well, we can tick off all the boxes. We can guarantee the product is actually in the state it should be because there were no temperature deviations. And the finance department said, we would actually like to use the data and optimize the complete supply chain performance, because if we can supply our customers one day earlier, we can invoice one day earlier, which is so much more millions of gain in financial input, that we will pay your entire security setup. Security actually was a side effect. And the biggest effect was the financial gain. So as mentioned, data is useful for a lot of departments within a company, and not just from a security point of view. So you need to find other stakeholders, and then together you could have a much more benefit for the company.
An example that I would give is when you have a lot of data available to you, and many a times on the other end, when you have to take an action, a lot of operators might not know how to react. So while such systems are ingesting data, but they're also predictively telling you, what is to be done and what could be the possible steps vis-a-vis a situation or vis-a-vis an incident. So this radically reduces the response time, and response time reduction or time reduction is money. So, I mean, in that way, you can easily substantiate the value of such tools and the investment, and what's the value of this investment vis-a-vis the time difference and how quickly you can respond to a situation.
So data is only data until you analyze it, right? And that sort of big data gives you insights. But then again, insights is only insights until you find a way to really leverage it, to operationalize it. So you're moving from information to intelligence, to actionable intelligence and action. So to give an example, just like what our MC alluded to earlier, scams, for example, is within the top 3 concerns of any country, including this. So we are in the process of helping the government set up the anti-scam center here, and we're using the data that we are collecting to be focused as to, for example, where are all the bad actors, right? What sort of TTPs are they using? Can we whitelist some so that the legitimate callers can come in, and blacklist those, okay, that the fraudsters are coming from? And it's always going to be endless battle, because with IP spoofing, with phone number spoofing, right? If you blacklist this number, I'll simply move on to the next number, right? So in interest of time, we're just going to ask one final question, right? And we make it very general. So what are your general thoughts of how we can better leverage, this sort of big data, right, to not just make your company, but our entire ecosystem better? Richard, you want to kick us off?
Well, in a way, you're already doing that. I mean, yesterday you showed us the TAPA EU site, okay? And you were taking all that data from law enforcement and Europol, and you were able to map incidences across Europe where you have certain crimes. So that in itself now, you're mining that data, and you as a member can now say, right, I'm now going to plan my routes to avoid those high crime hotspots. So you're already leveraging off the benefits of that accumulation of information which is being fed in by members of TAPA and also by law enforcement. So that in itself is you're already, mining that, analyzing it, and then using it for your benefit to, change the way that you would move your goods through the market.
Yeah, I mean, I could support. I mean, the TIS tool is great. I do have to add one more thing to it, and that's the quality of data. So the more you put in, the better the data becomes. Report it, add the values. I mean, the data is anonymous, but the actual output is for all the members to use it for intelligence purposes, and not just to find out which phone got stolen where. But yeah, it's the data quality, and that's very important, because if you know the saying about quality going in and going out, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with what Richard first said, right? I think most of us are already doing that. We already have access to different data sets in the public domain, on the free domain. A lot of our services are subscribed. So you already have access to that data, and you have different tools within departments which are utilizing that data. The one point that I want to make is the more data that you have, the more overwhelmed you get, right? So, and one is for applications to convert that data into information. It's quite another for certain application to focus on your actionables, right? So when you have an overwhelming burden of alarms, you then, by reactionary, you would get into an alarm reduction program. And a simple tool can tell you that 90% of the alarms in your company or in your facility were just because of misaligned doors, right? Something as simple as that. So it's both ends. From the generation side of data, assimilating it, and for you to consume data and to have an action.
Right. So in the interest of time, right, if I could just wrap up quickly, I think that hopefully over the last 15, 20 minutes, you in the audience have a better idea of both what the map, right, and the territory looks like. And partnerships are important. Partnerships is important in terms of crisis, in terms of war, but partnerships must be built in times of peace. And that's why we have forums like this. I'd like to thank Tony and Matt for organizing such forums, for us to get together, right, to align our thoughts and harmonize our response. Because this sort of like convergence of knowledge by diversity of thought is important. Because heaven forbid, we do not want another echo chamber, right? We want to make sure that our clarity of thought is on point. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our panelists.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.